All right. My guest today is Pennie Homa, the co-founder of Homa2U. For those of you who don't know, Homa2U is an online to offline building materials and interior finishes marketplace that's supplied from brand new items on through to unused construction materials, discarded and overstock markets. Thank you very much for being here today, Pennie.
Hello, Kevin. How have you been?
Very well, very well. Now, anyone that knows me knows that I always start a conversation with understanding the origin story. So take me back. How did you start your entrepreneurial journey and how did you decide on launching Homa2U?
It has to be rewind back to like 6 years ago when I actually helped one of my good friend who solved one of the, I wouldn't say like a really major problems, but every of the business involved money, right? So he actually overpurchased the tiles, the flooring material of 500,000 and in due to the staffing mistake, the staff problems. So this has indirectly caused one of the financial crisis in his company. I have been in the industry for the past 16 years. So he is one of the really very dear friend of mine. And because of that, I'm thinking like, okay, if this is the overpurchase, why don't I just help my friend to clear off the stock so that he could actually get some money to pay off the suppliers. So this batch of stock, actually, I find another buyers, who is a retailer, and we just take this particular so-called overstock, that he overbought, and then we just trade it to reseller, and that is how we actually help the companies to solve this problem. When 6 years ago, I was actually helping my parents, my family business of trading all these kind of building materials to construction related companies. And this has actually given me an idea like if we could help people, I mean, if he could have this problem, that means there are many of the construction companies who face this problem as well. Like probably human error that someone actually purchased wrongly, or it could be also our industry problem that especially is houses nowadays is very costly. So customer are prone to be like very knowledgeable that they will find all kind of information in a website. So the kind of complaints that or the quality assurance that requested by the consumer become very high. So it is a norm for our construction related companies to actually have a 7 to 15% wastage just to make sure that when there is a complaint from the customer, they will be able to do the rectified jobs. True enough, 6 years ago, after I really go into a lot of construction companies and find out if they really have this kind of overstock, and I found that this is actually one of the major issues. Most of the stock that they over purchase or they forced to purchase, right, after the construction finish, they will have to either keep it at the basement or they will have to push it to the junkyard. And for your information, all this material that we have, right, are considered a non-biodegradable construction material. You just imagine that you renovate a house. I'm sure that you have a lot of all this kind of leftover, maybe a couple of cartons of tiles has been left in your storeroom. Right now, you just put an example that there are thousands of houses that developers is building, and this is a massive waste that we are solving it. And taking the right on this particular rubbish problem or into this kind of waste, right? We thought that this could be one of the idea that we can really focus on, helping to reduce the burden to the environment. Yet we will be able to give a lots of discount to our customer because all this material was being over purchased, meaning to say they already don't have a second life ready. And yet we will be able to still make a profit. It is just like a very simple idea of like how one man trash can actually become another treasure of someone else. That is how we actually started the entire idea based on that.
I,
Yeah.
I I love that last part, but I love how you started from an insider's knowledge of the industry in the space and realizing that everybody ends up over ordering. You have to have excess stock as a construction company for the reasons that you highlighted. And then what
Yep.
happens with it? As you said, it ends up enabling this circular nature of it, to where it's not just going to end up in a landfill somewhere.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I am curious when you look at that segments of the business, is it primarily the large construction projects that you really target, where they're putting up apartment complexes, or is it also residential houses, etc., that is having this excess issue?
Yeah, unfortunately, in due to limited resources, we can't really go down to like residential, because residential could be, they have probably a leftover of like 1, 2 cartons or very small quantities that you can't probably reuse it in another project. But in the near future, we could probably come up with another marketplace, or most of the people will trade their so-called overstock through, Facebook marketplaces and all. But we are solving a more serious problem is because you just imagine being a construction company and probably handling a few 100 million projects. To you, probably the 200,000 kind of leftover is something that you will not really care about unless this thing has already caused you a problem, example, financially, or maybe a space issue. Then you will think of, okay, right now I need to look for some solutions to really get rid of things like that. What we are trying to do is, you don't, as a developer or contractors, you don't have to really get your hands dirty. We are one of the solution that we were happy to clear off, be it just one few $100,000 or up to like few $1 million. And we knew that this is going to be one of the massive problem for them, because you just imagine if this company has been there for 20 years and they probably have built more than like 20, 30 projects. And the kind of massive waste that they have created, eventually when they wanted to do a land clearing or things like that, they would need a solution of getting rid of this. I would say that in Malaysia, maybe the problem is not so serious until that the developer have to start doing something. But you just imagine in Singapore, the land is very scarce and things are very expensive. So this is one of the solutions that we knew that we will be able to help a lot of companies, be it big or small, to solve this, not just because of the profit and things like that, but more towards like how you mentioned the circular economies. We are trying to make the kind of influence, or we would say that probably an education methods, that whenever you want to buy, you don't buy excess. Probably you do a lot of a more precaution way of why not before you create a waste and you stop creating the waste. This is what we are trying to do at this point of time, besides taking off those kind of stock. I think this is the only solution that we can really help to solve in order for us to, move on that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So would it be correct to say that the majority of these construction firms are doing one of two things? They're either storing the excess in some sort of land or facility that they have, hoping that they can use it on another project, or maybe they're paying some sort of firm in order to take it to a wastage management or something along those sort of lines. It's generally one of those two categories, yeah?
I would say in Malaysia, the majority will find a land to really store those kind of things, is because
land's abundant and cheap and
abundant land, or probably they will store it in basement 2, 3, or 4. These are the general thing that people do, is because you just imagine that if you want to discard, you need a lot of money to discard. You have to call, for whatever service you need to pay. And most of the time, you cannot just discard like a few 100,000 stock, the thing that is still usable. So most of the people, they will think like, okay, like you mentioned, okay, I'll just keep it in somewhere. Most of the time, I'll be using it for another project, or, going to somewhere. They'll probably just donate it to someone rather than just discard. But the problem is, once you keep it already, especially in construction companies, right, they don't really have like an inventory system that I'll keep, keeps track of this kind of stuff. So they will tend to forget about it, and then they will keep on order. So from 1 acres of land, it becomes 2 acres, and then it will become 3 acres, and so on. Until there is one time that the storage is already full, then they will start to donate. So this is what is happening. But in Singapore, it's different, because the land is very expensive. What people do is, okay, I'll just discard. So discard to probably Malaysia or Indonesia. This is what they actually did. So it's a different kind of region. They will have different kind of solution as well.
And when they discard, it's going to waste, or they're simply donating it to whoever's willing to pick it up. Because I imagine, the same way that I have to pay a fee in order to collect the rubbish from my home or my business, I'm kind of imagining that they're having to pay a fee for somebody to come and collect it. Yeah.
Unfortunately, to comes to recycle, Malaysian is still not doing a very good job, in a way that we don't distribute what kind of waste. So most of the time, in construction, there were thousands of kind of waste. So most of the time they will just discard, this. Of course, if the quantity is massive, they can actually take it to donate to some temples or some charity home or things like that. But most of the time, people don't manage stock like this. So they were like, okay, these are some of the stock. there is a bin coming in, I'll just chuck everything in. So these are the things that most of the time, although it can be reused, but most of the time it will be treated as a rubbish to go to the landfill. This is the thing that we have actually noticed, and it was very toxic in a way, and it's a waste of resources as well.
Okay. Okay. So then you come in, and do you offer the ability to pick it up from the location? And do you have your own storage facilities as well, or how do you manage the inventory side yourself?
When we started, we really have to manage it ourselves by picking up the stocks. It was a very painful and painful process because while we are trying to recover all these things, we have to do the education part. The starting part would be we will have to take back whatever junk that was. I wouldn't want to put it as, but in a way that they would treat the whole thing as like junk, and then we will have to take it back into our current warehouse. Then we will have to do the sorting and etc. before we can actually sell it to the public. Through the first processes, then we actually learn how, overstock or kind of thing. Then we begin to educate them by, these are some of the stocks that you really need to take care of, how you actually able to put it and how you're going to store it. Right now, most of the stock, we actually have two methods. One, if really our clients do not have enough space already, this is one of the problems. We actually have a warehouse that we will help them to store, and end of the day, we'll be charging them a minimal fee. Or second, if the contractors actually do have a space, like example, in a basement, or they have a warehouse, we will then put the stock over there. Whenever there is a supplies or there is a purchase, then we will go and pick it up from the space. Because we do not just handle construction leftover at the moment, we also working with factories. Factories will have like overproduced, probably aging stocks. Yeah, they will probably have like the discontinued items and so on. So those items we are currently working back to back, meaning to say they are all brand new products in a good condition, just that the inventories wasn't being synced. So right now we are taking this, and then whenever there is a customer purchase, then we will go to the warehouse and pick it up. So these are the two methods.
Okay. Yeah. And so if it's being stored at the construction company's facilities, you have to be able to register it and inventory it as well. So you have like a trained person that goes out on site, or do you leverage any sort of what's the process like in order to be able to understand, quality, what type of material it is, how, if it's tile, how many square feet or how many, those sort of details?
Yeah. So far, we only work with people have a purchaser in their company. So what we actually did was, the purchaser will have to count all this kind of stuff, and most of the time they won't be able to sell it off. Those are the conditions that we are working with them. Example, this purchaser is the person that we will be liaising with. So whenever there is a sales happen, then our people will then contact the purchaser, then we will go and pick it up. But most of the time, they will not want to store this item themselves. They will still put it in our warehouse. So then we actually have our warehouse with the management system and so on to manage the inventories and how many square feet and so on. Yeah.
Okay. And then it's kind of on like a consignment basis, is it? To where you only are paying them when you sell it?
Yes, you are right. Because as Homa, right, we are really like a platform. What we are trying to do is we are facilitating the entire processes. So we cannot be taking other people's junk to become our junk, to become our stock, and then we try to resell it. But end of the day, it will become our old stock again. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to use design and matching by providing a different kind of service. So we actually do have like solution consultants that help customer to really match products. For example, we see like your area, probably your car porch is 1,000 square feet and you like gray color. We will then check it out, or most of the time right now, our inventories was being synced from the WMS to the website. So customer can see, okay, right now I only have 1,000 square feet, and I think that these particular products can able to fit the size that I want. Then they'll make a purchase directly from online, then we'll get it delivered. But of course, if, a lot of end user or customer, they might not know like how to calculate and things like that. So we will still input the customer service person to really help customer to make a decision making. Yeah.
Okay. So let's focus on that end user, the customer side of who's ultimately purchasing it from you. So on the one side, the supply side is coming from larger construction firms, generally speaking.
Yeah.
And on the customer side, what's the typical profile? Is it a do-it-yourselfer home remodel? Is it a home remodel construction firm? What's the typical customer profile?
About 5 years ago when we started, we do actually attracted a lot of villagers, a lot of kampong Malay people, because they tend to do a lot of DIY and renovation in a small scale. So they will tend to, today I come to Homa, I will bring my whole entire villagers, some of the people to come along. And that is how we started. But along the way, we knew that if we were to go through this kind of process, the business is going to be really very community based and it's going to grow very slow. Right now, especially during the pandemic, a lot of people couldn't really travel, things like that. We started to move our business model to more towards like a B2B2C. Right now, we are working with a lot of interior designer contractors or a smaller scale developers that they probably build a pocket size of like 20, 30 units of houses. These are the people that we are currently working with and they are actually our customer. We are not really working with like, taking these big construction companies material to supply to another big companies, construction related, but we are more towards like still a renovation kind of thing, be it renovation or like probably some commercial projects, but it still mainly go back to like renovation segment. Yeah.
Okay. And so the way that you ended up developing that channel, I mean, I'm going to make an assumption here and tell me whether it's correct, but because of your background, I'm assuming that you had existing relationships with a lot of the construction firms. So managing the supply side of the business was probably a relatively, not easy, but a relatively easy scale up for you. But getting the customer side is a bit of a new segment, I would guess, for you. And so how did you go about building that side of the business?
Yeah, like you mentioned, it's still a supply and demand. And then, when we have the supply in and we have to make sure that the demand is on site as well. I would say that getting the supplies is really not extremely difficult because especially when I have already in the industry. So getting this supply is not something difficult. Getting the demand on site, I would still say relatively easy for us is because when we started, because we are selling like a second, I wouldn't say second hand, but it's more towards like oversupplies kind of thing. So we actually use the price as the attacker. A lot of people will say like, okay, I used to pay like $10, 10 ringgit for a brand new items. Right now, Homa is only selling like 7 ringgit. So I may be compromising probably on certain of the, packaging and things like that, but generally the product is still very good. We actually drive this particular business, number one, when we started is using price attacker. After we have started that already, we started to build our community. And this community are the people who started to drive into sustainability. Do you think that we actually do influence like, why would you want to purchase new, as in brand new from the factory? But instead you can actually get it at a discounted price, yet you are actually helping to save the environment. So this has actually become one of the very norm thing for us to really do a shout out. And eventually we do attract a lot of customer that is coming back through word of mouth. And because the business model itself is just not like money making, but it's more like solving really one of the major problems in the construction. Of course, when we talk about oil and gas or, renewable energy and things like that, we may not be there yet. But construction is actually taking up a very, very massive problem in terms of, environment as well. So we do attract some media to really did a lot of cover for us. So this has actually helped us to build the brand and demand as well. Eventually, for the past 5 years, it was because of this, then it actually helped to keep a balance because the demand is there, because of the shout out is there, because of the appearance that we appear in many of the different kind of media, and especially a female entrepreneur is doing something that is very manly in the industry. So we actually got a lot of covers from all over the places, and because of that we also get the supply not just from my circle, but it's more towards like a lot of different kind of people who refer here and there. So right now our company's become a community and people's company that drive this thing forward together. That is how we actually manage it.
Okay. And so I mean, it's marketed as, not brand new, but in reality it's unused by and large, even though that pallet of tile may have been open to fulfill a project and it may be only a quarter pallet left. It's never actually been used in a location.
Yes. It's exactly the case. This is the case, but sometimes they might have some, because the thing they do not, the kind of products, most of the time, a lot of contractors do not really aware. So they will tend to like leave it outside and then it will be rain and shine and then started to have fungals and things like that. So it is not the product is entirely brand new and the quality is still there. It's just that we have to convince our customer that we probably need to do a little bit of cleaning or you may have to accept a little bit of chipping at the side, but doesn't mean that this product is not usable. You can probably put it into places that is not so obvious, but it's still usable. To a lot of people, like, I just want to save some cost, probably some backyard that I wanted to do some renovations that I really don't mind of, a little bit of chipping or probably stain. What I want is something that is usable and is economical. So that is how we educate our people to, by reducing this, for every of the meter square, you're able to help to reduce 16.42 kilo of CO2. They were like, wow, we actually did something, besides, buying from Homa. This is something that we can really help the planet Earth to make it a greener place. So that is how we actually make it turn around.
Yeah, you take less out of the landfill at that point in time, and you don't have to create new product in order to fulfill this because of the natural state of the market, where by necessity these companies must over order in order to problems happen on construction sites. It's inevitable. So there's always safety supply.
Yes, correct. You are right. You're right.
Okay. And so currently you're in Singapore and Malaysia, or have you expanded the business to other markets as well?
We are currently only in Malaysia, but we are planning to expand our business to Singapore in the first quarter of next year.
Okay.
A lot of business study, analysis and research have to be done because although it's a very similar business context, but in terms of customer behavior and the buying patterns, it may still be different. Hence, we are looking for partners over there in Singapore to really work together hand in hand to solve these very, very crucial problems in construction. Yeah.
Okay. I'd imagine two things. First, I'd imagine on the side of this getting supply, the dynamics are probably the same. Even some of the names of the companies are likely the same. But the same issue that you highlighted in regards to storage and how a lot of the Singapore firms just prefer to discard. I imagine that's probably the biggest trick to be able to solve in order to enable that market.
Yeah. Hence, technology is very important because, customer is probably the same. We are actually focusing on people who really conscious about cost and also into sustainability. But talking about if we were to set up the entire model in Singapore, it would be seriously very costly. So what we can do in Singapore is we probably have to do the matching part, which then we will have to use our website to make sure that, contractors actually managing this part of stock so that we can actually do like a trade in between rather than we are taking the stocks. Of course, if the stock is massive, then we can probably put it in like a more economical place in JB. It's a different cost. It's a double handling costs that we are trying to eliminate because, if we were to mobilize our transportation and things like that, we are basically creating another CO2 coming out from the processes. So this is the thing that we are trying to see if we can use technology to really do a facilitating rather than we take back the stock and resell it. We want to make the trade happen between the contractors and probably the sellers and buyers as well.
When you say the technology and all of that, does it mean that you need to integrate in with the systems of the construction firms where they have a running tally of the usage, etc.? They always have this planned excess provision as well. So being able to actually have that level of visibility is what you're talking about, yeah?
Yes. There are two things that we can actually leverage because in Singapore and Malaysia, the differences is the adaptability in terms of, WMS and some of the building materials software over there in Singapore is much more established. There are so many companies in Singapore, construction companies that is using, material tracking. So basically their inventory management system is so much better in compared to companies in Malaysia. So hence we can sort of like track by using these kind of methods. So because Singaporean is companies in Singapore, they have to comply to certain of the green, that kind of stuff. So to them, they want to discard things. Also, they will have to really look into this part of it. So it's easier to manage that way in compared to Malaysia. So there is a pros and cons in both sides of the context, I would say. Yeah.
Right. I guess let me ask an additional question on the Singapore, and maybe it's a misconception that I have, but when you look at Malaysia, for example, as a point of comparison, there's a number of buildings that are under construction. There's a lot of activity that's going out there. Some not so fast, some a little bit faster, but that's a separate topic. But there's a lot of construction across the country. When thinking about Singapore, I kind of take this, maybe, and it's a misconception, but that it's a little bit more developed, that there's not as much new stuff going up on a regular
Mm,
basis. Is that true, or am I incorrect in that?
I would say that it is considered true and not true is because Singapore government is trying to implement a new area of the developments which they are trying to grow their population by 8 million in a
Mm,
couple of years. So these are some of the major developments that they are planning to build. If I'm not mistaken, the figure is they are planning to build additional 10,000 houses in a couple of years, like 2-3 years
okay.
kind of time. So there will be a massive construction over there. But besides that, right, Singapore, most of the houses was like HDB or probably some private properties and
Hmm.
so on, that they are required to do a lot of renovations after a certain period of time. To them, demolishing a property is not something that they will be doing because they are into like ESG,
Right.
sustainability and so on. But maintaining and upkeep the property is something that they are looking into it. Hence, we are actually working with we wanted to work with companies like amendment and alteration in Singapore, that they might be after 5 years or 7 years or 10 years, they need to tear down certain of the part and do up, to renovate the place. So these are the companies that, besides the brand new developments, we will also be working with this group of people. Hence,
Okay.
if there is a purchase, there is activities going on, the demand and supply will still be there, because
Okay.
it will not be just in time, or, as I mentioned, human become very smart nowadays and
Hmm.
they become very demanding. So
Hmm.
especially when I paid for so much of the money, I will want everything to be perfect. Hence,
Hmm.
the wastage will always be there no matter what. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess it's, on the aspect of the requirement for renovation, if it's going through HTB, is that going through a centralized party of who's responsible for making sure that that renovation is being done, or do the individuals have personal selection? And does that
Definitely.
change your end user sales strategy approach?
I would say yes, because recently we do have some of the conversation with companies over there in Singapore. What we noticed that the HDB was basically a government, a government body. So what
Hmm.
they do is they will be awarding certain of the projects to contractors. So contractors will be managing all these kind of units in the repairs and alteration and so on. But we are also looking at another prospect, which is, just imagine that if government actually paid like a renovation, partial of the renovation cost to your maybe one toilet.
Hmm.
They call it a home improvement program, that maybe government will pay like 2,000 or 3,000
Hmm.
for companies to do a repair. Most of the people will be like, okay, since this person already come into my house and do one unit of toilet renovation, why don't I just do a remodeling or upgrade to my entire unit? So this
Hmm.
is another opportunities that we are seeing along the way, besides, just the A&A kind of projects or brand new projects. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. No, that's super interesting, because the dynamics are similar, but there's definitely some nuances and distinction between the two markets that
Definitely.
makes it a little bit challenging, but I
Yes.
guess a little bit interesting for you as well. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Here in Malaysia, they don't really have like a government body to accommodate this kind of A&A. But here in
Hmm.
Malaysia, we do have a lot of startup nowadays is going into property management. Like example, I think Cozy Home,
Hmm.
some of the companies probably, they are doing these kind of things. So these are the people that we'll be working with in order for us
Okay.
to, sort of like impact together kind of stuff.
Okay,
Yeah,
very cool, very cool. So I guess, since we were talking about kind of the expansion that's planned to Singapore, you've got it on the roadmap. When you look ahead at the future of Homa2U, how do you define success as an organization?
Um, this is a very, very interesting topic. I think a lot of startup would look into the success of how many X growth you probably have,
Mm,
how many rounds of funding you probably created. But in Homa, we sort of being inspired by Zappos.com. We wanted to create like 10,000 happy customer in 2025, and we really wanted to focus very much on the impact that we will be able to create in our community. So I would say that defining success in Homa is so much different, that we wanted to make 3P into our measurement, which is how we really able to influence the planet. I wouldn't say influence, impact the planet, impact the people, and then it will eventually impact our profit as well. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I love the different principled approach to it, that it's not just kind of this singular profit centric
Yeah.
approach that you see out there many times. When looking at this, when you look forward and thinking in terms of expanding the business and driving towards those success metrics, is there, can you boil down to perhaps single activity or a decision, something that you absolutely must get right, that if you got everything else right but not this one thing, that things would be jeopardized? Is there something that keeps you awake, something that is your primary focus when you look at executing?
Um, I think when we have a big plan, we wanted to make, our customer the happiest customer in this segment. I think the people would be the major impacts that is going to drive this thing towards the yes and no. I think grooming people from a different identity background is the hardest thing that we can do as a leader. These are the part that I will still say that I'm still very weak at, but in a learning stage that we think empowering talent and, putting the right people in the right place is where I, being the founders of the company, is really looking at. While we wanted to achieve a lot of big dreams, we need to have a bunch of like-minded people that willing to chase things together with us. I think this is the major and one of the things that it switches my focus besides just like, chasing the numbers and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It's the team that's out there working day to day. It's the team that comes together to execute. That's fantastic. Let me wrap up here with this, my standard closing questions that I ask everyone. And the first one of these is there a tech tool that you just can't live without?
At the moment, I would say it's maybe to a lot of people it doesn't make sense, but to me CRM is very, very important. This is one of the tools that we did not implement in a first when we started the company, and hence we really couldn't get through the data of what kind of customer and so on. And we believe that being a customer-centric companies, right, we really need to have this data in order to move things forward. Of course, there might be a lot of, it's not just limiting to one, but I would say that this is the major thing that we are looking at this point of time.
Okay. And what is the CRM that you use, if I might ask?
At the moment, we are using HubSpot.
HubSpot. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's. I mean, there's a lot of folks that I know that are using that, and it's super powerful. There's a lot of functionality with it. Yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
Excellent. So the last closing question here before we wrap up is, if you were to talk to another founder that's just getting started out, what is the single biggest piece of advice that you could offer?
I would say always go back to the basic and go back to the basic, because startup is really not easy, because we are doing something that is extraordinary from what businesses is running. At times we have to face people problem, we have to face finance problem. If you have like different kind of investor, you have to manage, investor. There will be challenges happening in the markets that, because a lot of time we couldn't really see what is happening in the future, but always believe in things that you want to start, back to basic, and believe in the belief that you have, and always be persistent. Do not give up, because things don't get easy, but if you overcome this and you look back, you will think that, hey, we actually did a good job. I think this is one of the important things, that being a founder, the mindset is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not easy being a founder, and you need to have the correct mindset. That's some fantastic advice there. Pennie,
remember why you started.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of times you get lost along the journey because of all the ups and downs. You get distracted, the challenges get faced, but it's that kind of that center point, that makes you deal with the long days, the tough hours, the challenges, etc.
Yes. It's never easy to run a startup, but it's very contented.
Exactly. That's a perfect thing for us to close on, Pennie. I want to give you a big thanks for joining me on here. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you, Kevin, for having me.
All right. Thank you. All right, that wraps it up for another fantastic episode of the Sea of Startups. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. Go onto iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review. It's the best way for us to get discovered and to have these startup stories reach a broader audience. If you have any suggestions or would like to get in touch, you can email me at kevin@indelible.vc. As always, I'm your host, Kevin Brocklin from Indelible Ventures, and this is the Sea of Startups.